Hello and welcome to Politically Incorrect Knitters. My name is Ann Pinkava, joined as always by the lovely Deplorable Knitter. And this week we have special guest Karista Lowe from Sweet Mountain Crafts. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here for sure.
So, Karista, you own a yarn company and more, right? Sweet Mountain Crafts. So tell us a little bit about your business.
Certainly. Yes. So Sweet Mountain Crafts carries various product lines, with yarn being probably the most important of my products, just because I am an avid fiber artist myself.
Well, I can see behind you that you're a champion knitter.
Thank you. Yes, I had to throw that up there because I just got that ribbon last week.
Oh, congratulations.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a design by Genevieve K Knits, but that I got to test knit for her using some Sweet Mountain yarn. But yes, so I dye primarily yarns, but I also dye fiber. I hand sew, as Deplorable Knitters brought up, I make pom-poms and have fun with those. I do project bags a little bit. Those kind of tend to be a lower priority in my shop, but they are a fun thing to do. And then I also have another product line that some people might stumble across in the knitting community and go, what's this? But I also carry over here, you can see some of my Sweet Mountain mohair, which is actually a cinch cord that I dye for horse tack weavers. So people that weave horse tack and nose bands and breast collars and things for horses, they use a mohair cinch cord. So I also dye that. So I kind of just have fun putting color on just about anything that I can. So anyway, yeah, but certainly yarn is my focus. Both local yarns, stuff currently available in Wyoming that you can see over my shoulder here, and then also superwash wools and such that I get from suppliers that's provided from around the world. I try to use American made as much as possible, but there's just some of those fibers you can't find here in the States. So yeah.
That's cool. You are the first person I've heard of that does the stuff for horse tack, which is really interesting. And is there a bigger market for that because of where you live? Like you're more out west, or is that just something you fell into? Because that's interesting.
So yes, the story on that is that my sister-in-law is a horse tack weaver, and she weaves and then sells finished product. Her business name is Vero Tack. And so she started showing me some of the dyeing that she was doing for herself. And I said, well, I'm a dyer already. Why don't I just throw this in and I can help you by dyeing for you, and then you can focus on the weaving, because she spends hours weaving breast collars and cinch and such. And it takes a lot of her time just to do the weaving. So I said, look, I'm already dyeing here, I can pull down. So what this is it's an 8-ply cord, and it's a little bit coarser than like a mohair that we might be accustomed to with. So it's, I would guess that it's an older, like it's taken off the goat probably at an older age, because it's itchy. Like I wouldn't want to wear this next to skin. Right. But it makes for a really solid cord. So then what they do is they string this on a loom of their own sort, and they weave it. They use both the 8-ply, and then I also carry a 2-ply that they use. So lots of times, and this is kind of funny to me, but in the horse tack world, this is called tie-dye, even though I've done nothing to tie it when I dye it. Right. But it's called tie-dyed cord, and they take this and use it as their accent cord, and then they will put other colors and make some beautiful things. So actually on Instagram, I also have Sweet Mountain mohair, and if anyone's interested in seeing some beautiful horse tack that's been done by people that have purchased the mohair and woven it, you can find often in my highlights or in my stories, I'll feature people that have used it for a finished product. So yeah, And being from Cody, Wyoming, certainly this is horse country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in this area, so it's kind of fun for me to be shipping from Cody, Wyoming to horse enthusiasts all over. Although a lot of my customers surprisingly are in the Midwest, Minnesota, Nebraska, all the way, yeah, all over. But I've sent it all over, even out to New York. So there's horse people all over, and it's fun to dye for them as well.
That's really cool. That's you're the first one we've come across that does that, so that's really neat.
It's
So,
very fun.
cool.
I mean, that's a market I've never even thought of for yarn dyeing.
Yeah,
So that's really fascinating.
I didn't know it was a.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for my sister-in-law being a horse tack weaver, I probably would not have been aware of it either.
Yeah,
It's fun for me because I really enjoy just that customer base is really a neat extension of my business for sure.
So how long have you been dyeing yarn in general?
So I've probably been dyeing yarn for about 3 years, where I was doing it more intentionally. I mean, I think we all have the fun, Kool-Aid or food coloring dye experience just to play around and make horrendous looking yarn. And we go, I can never do this seriously. But I started taking it on a little bit more. I'm a homeschooling mom of 4, and my kids are getting older, and my oldest 2 are now graduated. So I just have 2 more at home. And I started looking for something that I could do that would be a business I could start and get going while my kids were at home, but with the intention of growing it to where as I retire from being a homeschool mom, I am segueing into my next career. So this is that. And yeah, so my business officially began in the fall of 2019. So just before things got really crazy, which it's been unique timing to start a business, but it's not been a bad time to start a business. So yeah.
That's cool. So you started right after the Ravelry ban then, so that didn't affect your business, right?
Correct. So yes, a lot of what you guys have had, opportunity to speak with other indie dyers and such about the effects, or even designers about the effects on all of that. It's actually in a way probably helped me. So this is a different experience for me than what I'm hearing a lot of people from a lot of people. And the main reason is that because Ravelry made the statement that they did, and because that distinctly set apart a group of knitters and crocheters and people that were seeking to be in the fiber arts, almost immediately gave me an opportunity to come in as a conservative, to come into a business with the mindset that I am not going to be basing my business off of Ravelry. I'm not at that point. I mean, when Ravelry came out with their statement, I was active on Ravelry. I was probably primarily used it as a way to queue projects for myself. I was in groups, but I didn't have a lot of time to be participant in those groups a whole lot. So when it came time that they made their statement, I was already getting a little disgruntled with some of the stuff that was happening on there. It was very clear to me. It was difficult, but it was very clear to me I was done. I was out. So I just said, no more, I'm gone. I ripped that Band-Aid off and kept moving and just said, no, this isn't for me. This isn't who I am. This is not a fair game. And I was done with them. And so at this point in time, I believe Sweet Mountain Yarn has some representation on Ravelry just because people are using it in projects, and so they'll state that they've used it in their projects. But I have no desire to be active or involved. And yet, because of that pullback from Ravelry, I immediately started looking, like so many of us did, for where are my people at? Who can I find to continue to be encouraged or challenged or just have fun sharing my projects with, or checking out yarn and how someone else has used it in a pattern or whatever. And so I've started, from there, doing like many of us, seeking out other groups, other opportunities, I guess. but it also gave me, as a yarn business, gave me an opportunity right away to just be unentangled with all of that.
Right.
That's interesting. I know for a lot of people, well, you have the unique viewpoint that you weren't ever in there. A lot of people had a hard time getting away from it because it was a main source of where people found them and things. So you never had to deal with that whole, like, now I have to rebuild kind of thing.
No, it's been very good. I mean, it just gave me an opportunity immediately to, I mean, it was a bit of a scare. I won't say that there wasn't a little bit of that. Just here I am jumping out into a world that has been so overwhelmingly seen, I guess is the best way, through Ravelry. I mean, so there was a little bit of a hesitation, a little bit of a nervousness for me to jump out and do something when I knew that I wasn't going to be promoting through this large entity that everyone knows in the knitting world. But I just said, no, I'm gonna just kind of keep moving forward and just keep pushing on. And really, I have not felt that as much as I thought I might at this point. It's been easy to just push on and not let what's going on with them hold me back, I guess.
Right. And because you started as like, hey, I'm a yarn dyer, I'm conservative, did you get any pushback from that? Or was it, like you had no coming out, so people kind of understood what they were getting?
So yeah, excellent question. I think that probably primarily, and I could be wrong, it's hard to tell sometimes who your customer base is, but I almost feel like immediately I was pushed into a conservative customer base. Mm-hmm. And so it's really interesting to me because part of where I live, as well as my experience of having kind of started this after all the big blow up had occurred, almost immediately I found my people and feel like I have a really solid footing in the yarn community with people that I'm like-minded with, or people that maybe we don't agree, but they're not going to cause me trouble because we disagree. And I'm happy to sell my yarn and have anybody that wants to work with it. I mean, I have no hesitation with wanting to even, be generous and working with designers or whatever that might come from a different viewpoint than I do. But at least at this point, there has never been a need for someone to attack or to directly come against me, because I've come out very clearly in the beginning as being conservative, separated from Ravelry, separate from a lot of the frustration and confusion that's been in existence.
Right.
Yeah, that's similar to my experience. I mean, obviously there was a phase where everybody was really mean to me, but for the most part, because you say what you're doing and you say what you stand for, they don't come after you like some of the people that they think they can intimidate or convert, or when you kind of come out of the gate like, hey, here I am, whatever, it's you can't really argue with it. So it almost makes it easier in the long run, instead of like being one of those companies yes. where, oh, well, nobody knows where I stand because I don't want to lose customers. And then those are the people that they try to bully because they haven't said what they believe. And so that there's sometimes it's almost better to, even if you know that some people might not agree with you, it's easier to get it out in the open in the beginning and just be done with it.
Well, yeah. Like I said, to a lot of where I live, would probably play into that, I guess, in a way. I live in a very conservative area. It's known that the state of Wyoming is very red. And because of that, I don't stand out here. I am very much in and amongst other people that are like-minded. And so just on a day-to-day basis, I'm not having to worry about making a bold statement or trying to be seen as something other than what is commonly around. I mean, it is that I am surrounded by a lot of people that are very like-minded. So I find that kind of probably helps kind of push a little bit of my own attitude on it, which is I don't really have to be bold or strong in too much of what I do. I am who I am. And there's going to be times that that's not what my customer may be, or someone else that's looking at my yarn may be, but it's okay. And so far I've not been directly attacked. So I'm thankful for that.
And
That's nice.
To divert slightly from yarn, living in the state of Wyoming. So how many coastal refugees have you guys gotten? I imagine. State of South Dakota, there are a lot of Washington plates. There's a lot of like, oh wow, you guys were not here before.
Yep, so we're feeling it for sure. I mean, housing prices have skyrocketed in the area, which is kind of crazy. It can be a little bit expensive anyway, and it's definitely driven everything up. We're seeing everything from, everything off the West Coast. So California, certainly Washington, a little bit of Colorado is moving this direction because they're getting the push from further south, I think. So yeah, we're definitely seeing it. And we have people though that, at least in the Cody area, I think Cody is well known on the map. And so I think people just think, oh, Cody, Wyoming, that's a cool place. And we have people that are here from all over the country, all over the world, that will move to Cody, Wyoming. And it kind of makes a unique melting pot in its own right, because you've got the long-term big names that have been here and big money that's been here forever. But it's also the constant turnover of people that have come in from all over the US and bring in new thoughts and new ideas, which for me is good. I mean, I didn't grow up here. I was born in Montana, but I've lived all over the states. So I've lived in Wyoming now for 10 years, but it's been a good place to be. I really enjoy living here.
I have to look up and see where it is on the map, because I live in New York and I only know the East Coast. And it took me the longest time to remember where South Dakota was, because I'm terrible like that. I'm a terrible East Coaster like that.
The way I put it is that we live right outside Yellowstone. So if you can imagine where Yellowstone is in the US, we are the east entrance to Yellowstone National Park.
Okay.
So we get a lot of tourism in the summer. A lot of people from, again, all over the world. I see plates from even Hawaii and Alaska here, which I don't know why you're driving vehicles from Hawaii and Wyoming, but they're here.
Oh, so she's your neighbor, Anne. Okay. Yeah, no, it's funny. You guys talk about everybody flocking to your state, and I cannot tell you how many people from New York they're just leaving in droves. Like, we had a birthday party a couple of weeks ago for my brother, and I invited one of my cousins, and he's like, oh no, I can't come. I'm moving to Florida. I'm like, what? Everybody's just going. Anybody who thinks the way we do, they're like, because it's gotten so bad here, you just can't even. It's just terrible. So that's cool though.
It's crazy to hear some of the legislation that's going on in New York. Again, we're so different in Wyoming that it doesn't even make sense most of the time what's going on across the country.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's interesting. I hear about these fabled red states, and I wonder what it must be like, but.
Well, and in the same vein, how were things for lockdowns where you were?
So I'm guessing possibly similar to you, but there was that initial lockdown that we all experienced, where it was, for 2 months we in the beginning, where it was very restricted. Our church was meeting only online. We went through that initial phase with, like most probably, where things were shut down, things were slowed to only essential. But it was really funny because the state of Wyoming, it's the lowest population in the nation. So we have the least populated state, and yet we're only 10th in size. So as far as how large the state is, I think they say that we can fit 6 people per square mile. That's how populated we are. So our whole state is like just over 500,000 people, which is like nothing when you compare us to other places. So when it came to mask mandates or lockdowns or anything else, I think, didn't they do the cell phone, like where they were tracking cell phone usage and how far phones were traveling and then ranking the states based on how much movement cell phones were making? And Wyoming was ranked as the worst. But when you consider that it takes me so far to get to the grocery store or just my own property traveling across it, and I'm going further than most, New Yorkers or people in Los Angeles just to get to the grocery store or pick up my mail, or, of course my cell phone's traveling further than anybody else. I may not have run into anybody in that whole time. I might have gone, 20 miles away from home, but never encountered anybody else.
Right.
But it's just a different experience for us here. We just don't have the population to be concerned about. So even with this new wave of COVID, there's just not, we don't have the population maps. I mean, we still have our numbers, we still have our loss. That's difficult, it's sad, but we just don't have the same experiences that other people do.
Right. Social distancing way before it was cool.
Seriously.
Yes.
We
And
joke here, like, stay 6 feet apart. It's like, I'm sorry, but 8 feet is talking distance. What are you talking 6 feet? Like, you're good. Stay there.
Yep.
But that's
Yeah.
a really interesting point about the, my store is a mile from me, but I have neighbors on all sides of me. So I might see a dozen people going from here to the supermarket, whereas you can go 20 miles. And it seems like they should have taken that into consideration. Like, population density. The 3 or 4 counties around me have as many people in it as your entire state does. So it's a totally different ballgame when you talk
Right.
about it like that, which is really interesting. I was teasing Anne a couple weeks ago, telling her that I have more people in my county than they have in South Dakota. So but,
yeah, it's just that's one of those playing with numbers that they can definitely push an agenda just by playing numbers and not really even looking at the further story sometimes. And yeah, I mean, in Wyoming, I'm surrounded by public land. So we have Bureau of Land Management, our own kind of BLM here. And it's a whole different story when I can go out and I can, utilize public lands and go for miles without seeing other people. And so actually during lockdowns, that's what we did as a family. On Sundays, we would take Sunday afternoon and we'd go hiking, and just as a way to get out of the house. And on that hiking trip, we might run into 1 or 2 other groups, but you're out in the woods, you can stay away from each other. You're out on mountain trails, you didn't have to get near each other. So I mean, that was our lockdown, was let's go outside and do more hiking.
well, that's kind of cool.
With your yarn business, is the majority of that online, or do you work with yarn stores? Did that get affected? Or
Yeah. So I started on Etsy just to get things going. I'd had an Etsy shop off and on over the years. Yarn dyeing is not my first cottage industry. But so I started there just to kind of see how it'd go. Things seemed to be taking off fine. Again, this was all pre-COVID. So, and it was in the fall. So, as we know, fall, winter is kind of a good yarn selling season. And then also a huge incentive for me to start dyeing yarn is that my local yarn shop, which is run by Amy Nemeth, it's called Grand Loop Yarn and Fiber. She's not much of an online presence. And at that point in time, she was carrying some indie dyed yarn, but from like Ancient Art Yarns up in Canada and Wonderland Yarns, I guess. But just a select few. And I said, if you had a local yarn dyer, would that be beneficial? I mean, we're such a tourist industry here,
right,
that people traveling through are going to look for that locally dyed yarn or locally produced yarn. So that was kind of a major impetus for me getting going more than just an online Etsy shop. And so she said yes, and then COVID hit. And then her business slowed to, nothing, just like anybody else. Thankfully, she's in a place where she was able to maintain, so she didn't have to shut down her store, and guaranteed that she'd keep it open through everything to the best of her ability, and she's done fabulous with that.
Excellent.
It just meant that initially she couldn't take on my yarn like she had hoped originally.
Right.
So at that point, I started questioning, okay, if I'm going to do this, I obviously can't just rely on one local yarn shop. So I got busy and traveled around the state. I, at that time, was the only indie yarn dyer across the state of Wyoming that was actively pursuing yarn shops. There's a yarn dyer, a couple others in the state that I've gotten to know since, but they don't promote other than just locally. So I went down to Laramie, which is an 8-hour trip for me. So I have yarn in Cowgirl Yarn in Laramie, Wyoming. I have yarn over at Knit on Pearl in Jackson. I formed a relationship with Windblown Fibers in Casper, who's now just an online entity. They closed their brick and mortar through everything.
Okay.
But they still purchase a lot of yarn from me. And then I also went up into Montana. So like I said, I'm originally from Montana, went to college in Montana. My son's now at school up there. So I also have yarn at Sticks Yarn in Bozeman, Montana. So yeah, and I hope to expand from there. I've just been busy enough at the moment that it'll come in time.
That's amazing. That's, especially for one little shop, that's a fairly widespread presence.
It's been amazing, actually. And I was nervous, with the pandemic and everything, because let's see, it would have been last summer, so 2020, that I was traveling, the end of last summer, that I was traveling down to Laramie. And I know these yarn shops are getting hit hard, and I just thought, is this going to go? But I just went for it. Again, I was kind of like the Ravelry thing. I'm just like, you know what? It's okay. If it takes off, it takes off. If it doesn't, it's all right. I'm just going to keep moving forward. If they, are just polite to me and say, you've got some nice product, I can't take it, that's okay. At least I get feedback that way, and that'd be good too. So I figured I'd learn one way or another. And so far, all of those yarn shops have come back for repeated orders. And so, yeah, at this point in time, like I say, I'd love to expand. I initially focused on Wyoming because as a state, we're one of the top wool producers in the nation. I think it's appropriate that we should have some indie dyeing happening here. So yeah, I focused on Wyoming, but there's still yarn shops in Wyoming I haven't visited with yet. So need to get to those. And then I'll stay, I'm only 45 minutes from the Montana border.
But yeah, it's a pity because, that you're, there's not more South Dakotan yarn shops for you to expand into, because right there on near the Black Hills, I only know of one yarn store, and that is a crying shame.
That is sad. And I've been saddened to see, yarn shops across the country just closing doors because they just couldn't maintain. We are not essential. As much as I like to think it's essential, we are not an essential business.
Yeah.
And I recognize that. And I know this has been a hard time, but I also see that there's potential there too, that, when one business closes, there's the opportunity for someone else to step in. And like the yarn shop in Casper, they just went to an online presence and they're still doing well. And a new brick and mortar shop just opened, actually. So there's a new store down there that I haven't made contact with yet. But yeah, it's just, that's part of business. Things come and go, and it's okay. And same with what I'm doing, the people that I work with, I anticipate that it's going to be an ongoing, things are going to go great one direction for a while, and then it'll kind of switch course and go great another direction. I'm happy to do that. Thankfully, as a one-person shop at this point in time, I've got a lot of flexibility. So that's the convenience of still being small. I utilize my kids. I hire them hourly as needed. And I imagine someday I may grow beyond that. But at this point in time, I can kind of weather the storms and do okay. So.
That's really awesome. The pandemic got rid of pretty much every yarn shop that I knew of in New York. There's still one left, but they've told me they don't want, not me specifically, but but I don't fit their chosen demographic because of who I am. So I have never checked it out, unfortunately. I know it's popular with Ravelry people though, but other than that, there's nothing around here, and it's really too bad. Come to New York. When I start my yarn store, we'll stock you, okay?
Perfect. That sounds great. I'd love to be represented on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the yarn store's still years away. I've told my husband I want to do it, and he said, well, maybe. So you never know.
Yeah. It's sad to me that any yarn shop would restrict their customer base. I mean, granted, even the yarn stores I'm working with, we don't see eye to eye on everything. I mean, I can tell from their advertising campaigns or some of the way that they're a little woke with their presentation on some of their yarns. I don't see eye to eye with everybody. But you know what? They carry my yarn. I'm happy to go in and have a business relationship with them. You know, it doesn't seem to be getting in the way at this point. Could potentially, but right now, I think it's any shop would limit their customer base.
Yeah. No, if I went in and I didn't say anything, that would probably be fine. But I have, you know, a Deplorable Knitter button on my bag, and I wear my t-shirts, and I just have a feeling that it won't be the nicest reception were I to go in and be like, hey.
Well, we were talking a little bit before the show that you said, you know, your Sweet Mountain Crafts and then specifically Sweet Mountain Yarns, and the sort of difference between the.
So, and the reason that I kind of differentiate that is because I did want to pursue possibly other areas of production, not just yarn alone. So I decided, you know, I'd seen other indie dyers kind of do similarly. Molly Klein Design has her Sweet Tea yarn, and just other indie dyers kind of doing the same. And I liked that idea of differentiating between different product lines, especially where I have the Sweet Mountain Mohair. And so actually on Instagram, I am Sweet Mountain Crafts, I'm Sweet Mountain Fiber, and I'm also Sweet Mountain Mohair. And the Sweet Mountain Mohair is a very specific audience, being that it's, like I say, horse tack enthusiasts. Some people do weave dog collars and stuff, but usually it's people that are already weaving horse tack that will do dog collars or purse straps or guitar straps with some of that cord. But yeah, my overarching is Sweet Mountain Crafts because I'm also a sewist. I love to sew. I have up here, you can grab it down. Well, first of all, I have my pom-poms that are bouncing everywhere that Deplorable Knitter has made use of many times. I'm not particular as far as, I know some people try to go with all natural. I don't for the pom-poms because this is very much just a side thing. I actually provide these also for a local friend who has a business. And so, yeah, I do pom-poms more as a side thing just to go along with, because I do have some yarn and a hat pattern that came out last winter that I'll be re-pushing, I guess, here in the next little bit. And it just made sense to be selling pom-poms that people could put on the hats when they do the pattern with the yarn.
Yeah.
But then I do some project bags, just a drawstring powder. It's a smaller bag here, but the thought is that I've sewn for years as well. I like having a shop that has enough that if people wanted to put together a gift, they would have that opportunity. And then a big hit, I've been amazed at how many of these I've made, is these hexagon pouches. And these are good for everything. Obviously, they're great for a notions pouch. The hexagon is kind of a fun thing for me with 4 kids. There's 6 of us in the family, so the six-sided shape kind of represents us in my own head, as well as my husband's a beekeeper, so we have bees on the property and honey. So I love the hexagon shape. But these are just great notions pouches, as well as they hold earbuds. And then someone actually said they put their AirPods in there and they had them on their keychain. And they would just set the whole pouch on the charging station or charging dock at night, and the AirPods could charge through the pouch. I thought that was kind of cool.
That's pretty neat.
But anyway, and then I do yarn cozies as well. So again, just some extras that if someone's coming to buy yarn in my shop, I wanted there to be some additional things that you could put and just make it. I love giving gifts. I like even when I'm packaging up an order, just feeling like I'm packaging up a present for someone. So it's just fun for me to have different areas of my business that cover that. And I feel like just calling it Sweet Mountain Crafts gives it that sense that I'm not just a yarn dyer. So, and then I do also carry, so I just got a spinning wheel in December. My husband gifted me one for Christmas. And the main reason was that I wanted to start dyeing fiber, but I wanted to understand what I was dyeing. And so I said, I better start spinning so that I understand when I'm dyeing fiber, what the outcome is. Right. So I actually love spinning. I'm still not really great at it. I have a lot to learn, but oh man, that's a whole nother level of just slow, easygoing. I love spinning. So I've been doing more spinning, and then along with that, doing more dyeing of fiber. But yeah, so my business really does cover a lot of things, with yarn being the primary focus. But yeah.
And speaking of wrapping everything up like it's a present, you do have a Christmas kit that you're coming out with too. That's on pre-order.
Yes. So this year I'm offering a Christmas cash kit. The kit will include Wyoming wool, which here, let me pull out. This is not the specific wool or the specific colors, but I like to work with locally raised wool that's processed at a mill in Buffalo, Wyoming. And so working with some of their wool, I'm putting together a 12 set mini kit in more traditional colors, a very traditional feeling Christmas set. There will be a project bag included that's going to be sewn by Sage Valley Handmade. Again, top quality. She prides herself on working with just top quality products and fabrics to produce her bags. And then I also have Dole Valley Girl working on a knitting pattern to go with that. And then I'm also I crocheted before I knit. So I'm going to be working on producing a crochet pattern to go along with for anyone. It's a DK weight yarn that's included in that kit. So it can work very well, lend itself very well to either crochet or knitting. But those kits are available on my website right now for pre-order. That pre-order will be open for a little bit longer. We have a limited supply. So if anyone's interested, make sure to stop by and check those out.
Very cool.
See, Christmas sneaks up on me every single year. So
It really does.
it's like, oh wait, it's just barely that sort of first nip of fall is coming. I'm like, summer's over, fall's here, then Christmas, and already thinking, sorry.
Well, my kids just asked when Christmas was, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, it's like 4 months away. Like all of a sudden, you think August, oh my, but no, it's coming up. And when you were talking about your spinning fiber, I think it's really cool that you are learning how to spin so that you understand how to dye the fiber. My brother often will buy my mom fiber for her birthday or Christmas or something. And, he just goes on Etsy and grabs a shop. And I'm like, dude, I have friends that do this, but but he gets these yarns and he's like, and my mom will spin them and she'll sometimes be disappointed. And it's almost like the people don't understand how the colors work together, or they're trying to have a theme. So like she got one that had like a ton of yellow in it for 3 months in a row. And she's like, I like yellow, but I don't like this much yellow. And it's like these really long repeats of it. And I just think it's really cool that you're working to learn how to work with it so that when you dye it, you know what's going to happen. Because sometimes the people who dye fiber, it feels like they dye it the same way they dye yarn, but then when you spin it, it's a totally different beast. And so that's I think that's really neat that you've decided to do it that way. Just I'm still supposed to be learning how to spin, but I don't know how to, but from what I've heard, it's very different. But
It's fun. Although I do have to admit that I started with a good spinning wheel. I didn't start with a drop spindle, and I've heard that drop spindles are really a whole different beast. And maybe someday I'll make myself work on that. But yeah, I actually even acquired a loom, a floor loom this summer, or I guess it was in the spring, that I was able to pick one up off our local classifieds fairly cheap. And so my goal is next to see what I can do with weaving so that I can, again, understand and then possibly produce yarns that weavers can use, which I did have a friend weave some of my yarn and turned into a beautiful scarf. So I know it's possible. It's just that I want to understand better, because occasionally you hear weavers say, oh, you can't weave with knitting yarns. And I kind of want to understand that a little bit more. I want to understand, or I've even heard it said that you can't weave with your own hand spun, but then I see people do it. So I just kind of want to, yeah, I'm always learning. And in the fiber world, it's never ending. I mean, my daughter and I tried punch needling recently and had fun with that. And there's just so many things. Or needle felting. I play around with needle felting too. And I just love fiber. So in all its forms and all its stages, and yeah, it's fun.
You're in a good industry.
Yes.
I think we all love fiber. We know where you're coming from with that. We're all very the same way. It's neat that you're instead of just going, oh, I know how to dye, it's fine. Like being able to understand what you're doing, I think makes a big difference, and it shows in the final products. So, because I've gotten some like yarns from people and they just don't knit up the way you think. But when somebody is a knitter or a crocheter themselves, you can tell when you use the yarn. You can tell by your result, and I think that that's cool that you're learning. And
yeah, I think there's still so much. I mean, you know, I'm in my 40s now, and I know that I don't have years and years and years ahead to be able to learn everything that there is, but I wish that I could just spend, you know, enough time to become a master knitter or a master crocheter or a master spinner. And yet I know I can't become a master of everything like that, but it's still fun for me to just learn enough to be able to apply it, especially to dyeing. Since that's the direction that my business has taken, I definitely want to feel like I'm producing a product that I'd want to work with myself. And the only way I know that is if I actually play around with it. And when I can, I'm not on top of things enough to always put out a sample with my yarns, where, you know, I know some other dyers will do what they can to produce sample squares, knit or crocheted. And it's just, oh, that's a lot to keep up with. But at the same time, I do work with my own yarns. I mean, the sweater here, the sweater I'm wearing, I work with my yarns because I want to know that what I'm producing is something that someone else would enjoy too, for sure.
that's very cool. And you can tell by the products. The pom-poms, if anybody's ordered one of my pre-made hats, the pom-pom has come from her. There were very few in the beginning that did not have them, but everything else has come from Karista and her store, because they are fabulous and wonderful, and they make my stuff look so much better. So you can tell when you're using it that's the plan. So I appreciate it. And I have a half done hat somewhere in one of your yarns. It's really, really pretty so far. But
the yarn that's called Morning. Yeah. I'm like excited to see what that'll look like all done.
Yeah, I'm excited. It got put on the back burner. I have like some real orders I have to work on, unfortunately. So like my play knitting has to be put down for a minute. But
I can bring up the fact that I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but as much as possible, I am trying to work with American made. Obviously, there are certain fibers that we can't get as easily here in the States. Superwash wools especially are difficult. But I have, and actually this is another really good thing that came out of the pandemic for me anyway, is that when the supply chain started, you know, closing down and we just couldn't get what we were hoping to get, I started looking for other sources, and it actually ended up really profitable for me in that I then started finding that, oh, I can get an 80-20, 80% merino, 20% nylon fingering weight yarn here in the States that is American made. And I would much rather support that industry here because, I mean, there's just so many benefits to it. And I know we've all heard that talked about, but I certainly like to do that as much as I can.
You said before, yarn stores are not essential businesses. And one of the ladies we had before, Kathy Karen, talked about how wool is a wartime commodity. I mean, during World War II, England got the corner on the wool market from England, Australia, and New Zealand, and Germany and Japan were wearing paper uniforms. Like, it was really bad. But because wool is important, it's important to have wool clothes, quality clothes that last well. Wool is not only biodegradable when you're done with it, but it's fire retardant. It's, keeps water off. It has all of these excellent high quality things. And oh, well, whatever, it's just the wool industry. I'm like, no, American wool is so important.
It is. And it's kind of fun to see to bring back American wool and even to bring back quality, because I think we've all heard too that, during Depression years, they tried to crossbreed so that they could end up with more meat, because at that point in time, they were needing meat more than wool. So I know a lot of American breeds are crossbred to where we've lost some of that quality here in the States, but I see it starting to come back. People are working to really improve the fiber quality. And then there's obviously groups that are working as well to just make sure that the wool and the fiber is being used and not just put in a big pile to be burned. And, I'd love to see, and will always get behind doing more of that myself, if and where I can. I'm actually, so Sticks Yarn up in Bozeman is having an event September 11th that is promoting the Fiber Shed project, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I'm still just learning about it myself. But it's an initiative to really encourage the use of these fibers rather than the destruction of them. So pushing and promoting the idea that there is fiber that's produced annually in the US that's just being discarded. It's being burned, it's being trashed, it's whatever. And so Fiber Shed is working really hard at trying to promote the idea of utilizing these materials. So this event that I'm going to up in Bozeman is, it's a fundraising effort for the Fiber Shed in Montana. We don't have a Fiber Shed division here in Wyoming at this point. Like I said, I'm still learning more. I want to know more about that entity before I get into it more, but I wouldn't mind getting behind. I mean, the initial overview of it, I agree with. So yeah, and I think there's more of that for sure. And then, like I said, with these Wyoming wools, that, I love the fact that I can buy wool that's milled, it's raised in Wyoming, it's milled in Wyoming, it's shipped to my house, I can dye it, and then I can sell it all over the States. And I work with, obviously, not just Wyoming milled wool. So the other American made, I can't trace back. I don't personally know where some of those are milled, but anytime I can use American made, I choose that. If I can find that opportunity, I will. So not to say I love fiber from other places. I mean, this is a Polworth fiber here behind me that I'm blanking right now on where that comes from, but it's not from the US. I work with stuff from Peru and Argentina, and yeah, so I work with lots. I actually have had the opportunity to work with a local alpaca farm as well, and do dye some of her stuff, but I don't have a lot of that available. I sell it more locally than online. So anyway, yeah.
I didn't realize that people just discarded the wool. And actually, my mom started spinning a couple of years ago, and we have friends that have a farm and they just have a couple of sheep, and they used to just take their fleece and throw it into the woods because it wasn't even worth selling. They couldn't, the man who sheared their sheep said that he couldn't get enough money to pay for his gas pretty much to sell all the wool. So they would just get rid of it. And actually now I have their wool because they were like, well, if you want it, you can have it, because people don't know what to do with it. And there's not enough of a demand. Like, I mean, the guy who shears their sheep, he has the fleece from all the sheep he shears, and he says it's not worth taking it to market because nobody wants it. And it's just mind-boggling to me that we're like, people are crazy about merino, right? Isn't that the one? And I think Kia Kuhn from Cedar Hill Yarns said that that's just because they've made it into a big name, and that people in the US need to start making our breeds more desirable to people, because that's what's happened with the merino, is that it just got popular because it became like a name drop thing. And so the thing that you're working with sounds really interesting, because we do need to start pushing to have more of our stuff made here. And I can't believe that they just take it and set it on fire. Like, that's insane to me. Like, when my friends were like, we put it in the woods, I'm like, what? Why would you put it in the woods? Give it to me.
Although I did find that it is, fiber is a good mulch. So this is kind of silly. I put this on my Sweet Mountain Fiber Instagram, but I happen to have a sheep on my property. He's not supposed to be here as long as he's been, but he was supposed to be for meat, and he's ended up on the property longer than, it's probably not very good meat anymore. But anyway, he has to be shorn in the spring. He gets too hot and he's miserable. So we have now 2 years in a row had to shear him ourselves just to make him more comfortable. And granted, he's not a fiber breed, so his fiber is not super high quality, but you know what? I'm having fun. The fiber that I've gotten off of him, the fleece, I've taken it and I've dyed parts of it, and then I've done some needle felting with it, and I'm playing with it. But there was enough there that I was like, okay, I got to do something else with some of this fleece. And I found that you can mulch. So it's in my garden. So I have fiber all over my life. It's on my plants, it's in my house, it's in my field. It's fun. So there are uses as well. Obviously it's used for dog beds and insulation, and people are finding uses like that too. But yeah, I think that, like you say, Deplorable Knitter, that there is a mistaken identity with merino, that's the end all be all of just the micron count, the texture, whatever people are willing to wear it. But I'm finding that with these Wyoming wools that I'm working with, so this one that I have in my hand here is a Rambouillet, and it's only a 2-ply, and it's got some vegetable matter in it, and it's kind of chunky, but once it's knit up, I have no problem wearing this. I mean, some people might be more sensitive than me, and I'm not gonna wear it like Icelandic wool. It's a little itchy. I'm not gonna wear that next to skin. It's a great outer layer. It's not so good next to skin. But there's a Targhee, actually I have some here. This is a Targhee wool, again from the Wyoming mill, that I've loved working with this, and knit myself a sweater that's like, yeah, actually, the sweater's kind of hidden, but it's back here. It's one of my favorites though to wear, and it's super, super comfortable, next to skin soft. And so, and if you look back at the ancestry of the breeding of these animals, they all come from the merino line. It's just that they've come from the merino line and been crossbred somewhere, so then they take on a new name, but it really is all merino. It just is a variation on merino. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of important in these things, when you're trying to sell to people who may not necessarily know what you're talking about. It's like you have to educate. You have to, educate and advertise. Like this. No, oh, wool is itchy. No, it's not. I mean, some people, like you said, are more sensitive than others, but it's like, no, this is lovely and soft. Please try this. Here, get it in people's hands so they can learn,
Some wool
the
is
importance
cheap,
of it.
but they've obviously gotten the wrong wool. You just need to keep trying. It doesn't all have to be merino. It doesn't all have to be superwash.
I know that's a sensitive area for some people, that they want to just get away from all of those man-made processes and go back to all natural. I'm not opposed to it. I mean, you can see this whole side over here of me is all superwash. It's a huge part of my business. It's a lot of, the 2 sweaters that I have here are both superwash. And I appreciate what superwash is. I do a lot of sock knitting, and I guarantee that my superwash socks fare better than anything that's not superwash.
I was about to say that bit of nylon does help.
It does amazingly. But as I'm learning more and more, that if you're wanting something that's going to be, as long as it's cared for properly, you want it to be long lasting, you want it to be something that does really have the qualities that we think of wool having, which is that cool in the heat and warm in the cold, 100% wool is going to be more the way that you want to go. And so it really is worth being mindful of what's your project, what are you working on, what is it that you want your outcome to be, and keeping those things in mind. The superwash, you can't, even just sitting here between these 2 stacks of yarn that I have, I can't dye 100% wool the same way that I can dye superwash. It just takes color differently. And when I dye superwash, it's very predictable. I know if I put a color on, I know where it's going to land. I know how it's going to strike. I know what the color is going to be. Wool just isn't the same. This is an example of, this is a variegated yarn that I did, and you can't get speckled on wool the same way that you can on superwash, on 100%, I should say. You're not going to get, the colors just play differently. And so I just have to be more content with things turning out differently with this fiber than with this fiber. But at the same time, I know that the end result, when I make a sweater with this, it's more likely that I'm going to wear this sweater for years to come, versus something that I'm going to have. I'll probably be more likely to throw these in the machine because they're superwash. I don't have time to hand wash everything. So, they're just probably not going to have the longevity, as well as the splashes of color. They're trendy, they're fun, they're exciting, but those colors change, where I find that I get more classic colors in my 100% wool. So stuff that I see just having more longevity to it. So that's kind of the differences I see. One is short-term, exciting, fun, it's predictable, all that. The other is more of a long-term, it's classic. It's going to be around. It has some great qualities that make it long-lasting, as long as you be careful to hand wash it and love it and take care of it.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I love superwash. I have kids. I'm never making them something that's not made out of superwash, because I'm not going to waste the time on something that can get ruined, but
for a few years at least.
Well, yeah, when they get older, I'll teach them about all of it, but right now they're still too small to worry about that. But speaking of superwash yarn, though, I do want to plug that Ann and I are doing a knit along. So we're doing a knit along for hats for sailors, and they've adopted a Navy ship. It's got 6,000 crew members on it, and so they need hats for all of them. So join us. It needs to be 100% superwash wool, no nylon, no anything else. It has to be superwash wool. And they don't want patriotic designs, because we don't know where the boat is stationed and it may be in a hostile area. So nice classic cables or beanies or things like that, they really want. And I hope you guys can, give us a hand in helping out getting these hats done for the sailors, because, they're out there working for us. So hopefully we can give them a little bit of Christmas cheer. They give it to them around the holidays. So if you guys are inclined to join us, Karista has some really pretty superwash wools in her shop that aren't patriotic looking, so check them out.
My 100% superwash is probably in my DK weight, I think, or worsted I think I have worsted and DK and 100% superwash. Most of my sock weight has nylon in it, just as a
I
heads
think
up.
most sock weights do have, I mean, the majority of them do. But, and as always, if you want more info, you can check our Instagrams because you know me, it's on Instagram. So I just wanted to I wanted to plug that.
I want to give a shout out to you guys for sure, just for doing such a great job. I've really enjoyed your recent podcast, and it's just been really fun to see where you guys are going and growing, and just, yeah. So you guys are doing a great job. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That feedback helps us a lot because sometimes it can be a little bit of a grind doing this every week. So we appreciate it. We appreciate everybody. And guys, our numbers are going up on YouTube, which is good. It's because everybody has been interacting with us, and that makes a difference in the algorithms. So remember to like, comment, and subscribe. You know, tell people that you watch us, because you never know. You might assume they know we're there, and then they'll be surprised to find us. So do that. And
we are also on Rumble, which is important in case YouTube decides they don't like us anymore. It doesn't matter how many people like or comment.
Which has happened before. So yes, don't forget we're on Rumble.
Yeah.
We're on Gab, Vero, MeWe, Telegram,
Instagram, Lovecraft, Galley
Galley
Life.
Life.
There you go.
We're everywhere. And I will drop links to Karista's shop, to Sweet Mountain Crafts, in the description below.
Your website is sweetmountaincrafts.com. And you said you had Instagram, and anywhere else we can find you? You have
I am on Facebook as well. I apologize, I don't keep up with that very well. And I am on Vero as well, but again, I haven't been as active there. So if push comes to shove and Facebook and Instagram have to go away, I do have those accounts. But at the moment, you can mostly find me on Instagram, a little on Facebook, and yes, in my online store. So yes,
Awesome.
Thank you both so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for
It was
coming
a lot
on.
of fun. All right.
Yes.
We will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.